Nestled in a valley where mountains cradled the sky like protective hands, there existed a village that appeared on no official maps and could only be found by those whose hearts carried a wish so desperate it created its own gravitational pull. The Village of Twilight Wishes, as its residents called it, operated according to a single magical rule that had governed its existence for over 300 years. Every sunset would grant exactly one wish to exactly one person, but only if that wish was made with complete understanding of what it would cost. The village had been founded by a wandering mystic who understood that wishes were neither gifts nor curses, but rather contracts with destiny that always demanded equal exchange. She had created the village as a sanctuary where people could learn the true nature of desire, consequence, and the delicate balance between what we want and what we actually need. Sophie discovered the village during the worst week of her life. Her daughter had been diagnosed with a progressive illness that doctors said would slowly rob her of mobility and independence. Sophie had exhausted every medical option, spent her savings on experimental treatments, and was left with nothing but desperation and a wish. She whispered constantly to the uncaring universe, "Please, let there be a way to save my daughter." The village appeared to Sophie as if it had always been there, materializing at the end of a road she had driven 1,000 times before. Cottages with flower boxes lined cobblestone streets, smoke curled peacefully from chimneys, and in the center of town stood a magnificent sundial that seemed to be counting down to the day's sunset with unusual precision. An elderly woman named Margot greeted Sophie at the village entrance with knowing eyes. "You've come with a wish," she said simply. It wasn't a question. Everyone who finds this place comes carrying hope and desperation in equal measure. But before you make your wish at sunset, you must understand the rules that govern this village. Margot explained that the village's magic was both generous and exacting. Every sunset, the most deserving wish would be granted, but the wisher had to genuinely understand and accept whatever cost the universe demanded in exchange. The cost was never cruel or arbitrary, it was always something that maintained cosmic balance, something that ensured wishes didn't create more harm than healing. Sophie was led to a small cottage where she would stay until sunset. Inside, she found walls covered with journals, hundreds of volumes written by previous wishers documenting their experiences. Margot encouraged her to read them, to understand that every granted wish had taught important lessons about desire, sacrifice, and the unexpected consequences of getting exactly what you asked for. The first journal Sophie opened belonged to a man who had wished for wealth to save his failing business. His wish had been granted, but the cost was that he would never again experience the satisfaction of earning anything through his own effort. The money came, but it brought no joy, no pride, no sense of accomplishment. He wrote about learning that what he had really needed wasn't wealth, but the confidence to rebuild what he had lost through his own work. Another journal documented a mother's wish for her son to be accepted into an elite university. The wish was granted, but the cost was that her son would have to face every challenge there completely on his own, without her help or guidance. She wrote about the painful but necessary lesson that her son needed to develop independence, and that her excessive helping had been preventing his growth. As Sophie read journal after journal, she began to understand the village's wisdom. Wishes granted without understanding their full implications often created new problems. The village forced people to confront whether what they wanted was truly what they needed, and whether they were willing to accept the growth that came with having their wishes fulfilled. The sundial in the village square tracked the hours until sunset with magical precision, and as the appointed time approached, Sophie noticed other wishers gathering. There was a young man who wished to be freed from social anxiety, an elderly woman hoping to reconnect with her estranged daughter, a teenager wanting to be recognized for her artistic talents, and several others, each carrying wishes they believed would transform their lives. Margot explained that the village didn't choose whose wish to grant based on who was most deserving or whose need was greatest. Instead, the magic responded to whoever was most ready to accept the full implications of their wish, both the blessing and the cost, both the immediate change and the long-term consequences. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, all the wishers gathered around the sundial. The moment required complete honesty, each person had to speak their wish aloud while simultaneously acknowledging what they understood it would cost them and why they were willing to pay that price. The young man with social anxiety spoke first, I wish for the confidence to connect with others, and I understand this means I must let go of the protective walls I've built and allow myself to be vulnerable, even knowing I might be hurt or rejected. I'm willing to pay this cost because genuine connection is worth the risk. The elderly woman wished next, I wish for reconciliation with my daughter, and I understand this means I must acknowledge the ways I hurt her and accept responsibility without defensiveness. The cost is my pride, and I'm willing to pay it because my relationship with her is more important than being right. When Sophie's turn came, she had to pause. She had come to the village with a desperate wish to heal her daughter's illness, but the journal she had read made her reconsider what she was really asking for. Was she wishing for her daughter's healing, or for her own relief from the pain of watching her child suffer? Was she willing to accept that healing might mean her daughter would face this challenge and grow stronger through it, rather than being magically cured? Sophie took a deep breath and spoke her revised wish. I wish for the wisdom and strength to support my daughter through her illness in the way she truly needs, even when that means letting her struggle and fight her own battles. I understand the cost is my need to control and fix everything, to protect her from all pain. I'm willing to pay this because what my daughter needs is not a mother who takes away all challenges, but one who believes in her ability to face them. As the last rays of sunlight touched the sundial, something remarkable happened. The magical device began to glow, and a single beam of golden light extended toward one of the wishers. The light touched Sophie, and she felt a profound transformation occurring within her. The desperate, frantic energy that had been consuming her for months dissolved, replaced by a deep, calm certainty that she could handle whatever came next. But the real magic became apparent in the days that followed. Sophie's daughter's medical condition didn't miraculously disappear, but something equally important shifted. With Sophie no longer panicked and controlling, her daughter felt free to express her own feelings about her illness, to make her own decisions about treatment, and to discover her own remarkable strength. The relationship between mother and daughter deepened as they faced the challenge together rather than Sophie trying to face it for her. Sophie realized that the village had granted her wish perfectly. She had received exactly what she needed, not what she had originally thought she wanted. The wisdom and strength she gained allowed her to support her daughter in ways that actually helped rather than hindered, creating space for healing that went beyond physical cure. The other wishers in the village that evening also received profound gifts, though not always in the ways they expected. The young man with social anxiety found that his wish wasn't granted with magical confidence, but rather with a deep acceptance of his anxiety and the courage to connect with others despite it. The elderly woman's reconciliation with her daughter began not with a dramatic reunion, but with a humble letter that opened the door to gradual healing. Margot explained to Sophie that the village's magic worked on a principle most people struggled to accept, that the universe always wanted to give people what they needed to grow, but growth often looked different from what they initially desired. The sunset wishes were granted not by changing external circumstances, but by transforming the wisher's understanding and relationship to their challenges. Over the following weeks, Sophie remained in the village, learning its deeper wisdom. She discovered that every resident was a former wisher who had chosen to stay and help others understand the true nature of desire and transformation. They had learned that the greatest magic wasn't getting what you wished for, but becoming someone who no longer needed to wish because they had developed the wisdom to work skillfully with whatever life presented. The village taught that every person actually received wish-granting moments throughout their regular lives, but most people didn't recognize them because they were looking for dramatic external changes rather than internal transformations. A difficult conversation could grant the wish for better relationships if approached with honesty. A professional setback could grant the wish for meaningful work if it pushed someone to explore their true passions. Every challenge contained the seeds of wish fulfillment if people were willing to see them. Sophie eventually returned to her ordinary life, but she carried the village's wisdom with her. She learned to recognize daily sunsets as opportunities for meaningful wishes, not magical requests for the universe to fix everything, but intentional commitments to show up with wisdom, courage, and love regardless of circumstances. She taught her daughter that they both had the power to grant their own wishes through the choices they made and the attitudes they cultivated. Years later, when Sophie's daughter had successfully managed her condition and was living independently, pursuing her own dreams with confidence and resilience, Sophie understood the full miracle of that sunset wish. The village hadn't cured her daughter's illness, but it had cured Sophie's fear, control, and inability to trust in her daughter's strength. That transformation had created space for real healing to occur, not just physically, but in all the ways that truly mattered. The Village of Twilight Wishes remained hidden in its valley, appearing only to those whose desperate wishes had become strong enough to bend reality around them. And every sunset, as golden light touched the ancient sundial, one person would receive the perfect wish, not the one they thought they wanted, but the one their soul truly needed for its next stage of growth and understanding.